Hey everybody, it's me, Steve Schnee, the CD Junkie, and welcome to another episode of I Bet You've Never Heard These 80s Albums Before. Please, if you like this video, remember to share, to comment, to draw pretty pictures and give them to your friends. Subscribe, but just know in the end that I appreciate you. This is a show where I pick 5 random obscure albums of the 80s. I talk about them, and then I play a little bit from them, and hopefully they remind you of a great time in your life, or maybe I'm introducing you to new memories. No matter what happens, I love this music and I love to share it, so let's get this party started. I bet you've never heard this 80s album before. First album I'm going to start with is the self-titled debut album from Tommy Tutone. Came out in 1980. This is a band that was founded in 1978 by Tommy Heath and Jim Keller. By 1980, they released their self-titled debut album. This is not the album with 8675309 Jenny. That song was actually featured on their second album. This is the more rockin' debut album. This sounds like, heck, Van Morrison Gone New Wave, or a little rockier, a little more raw. It's a fantastic album. You know, and this is the first time where we really got to hear Tommy Heath's unique voice. Of course, this album did fairly well, and that sort of encouraged their label to give them a chance at a second album, and 8675309 Jenny is the song that came from that. But the band actually released a total of 3 albums during the early 80s, and all 3 are worth your time. Tommy Heath has continued to release albums under the name Tommy Tutone. He's the only original member left. Let's go back and give a listen to the self-titled debut album by Tommy Tutone, released in 1980.
One more time. What do you say, June?
I bet you've never heard this 80s album before. Let's head over to the UK, 1982, and I want to tell you about a band called the Pinkies. If you are a power pop fan and you've never heard the Pinkies, then you are in for an absolute treat. This is a band, I think, apart from the debut album, the self-titled debut album from 82, there were 4 singles, I believe. The second one, Danger Games, actually entered the top 10 in the UK charts, but there was some kind of legal issue. I mean, their label was accused of chart rigging, and that killed the band's career. Label issues killing a band's career? That's a new one. But this is pure pop heaven. I mean, this doesn't have a punky edge. This is just straightforward power pop. I can't understand why these guys didn't sell more back in the day, and I can't believe that they are not as well known. They've had one song released on CD, and that's the song Danger Games, which has appeared on various compilations, but this whole album has never made it on CD, and it deserves it. But hey, that's my opinion. I want you to decide. This is the Pinkies' self-titled album from 1982.
It's love, ooh, love, danger game we play. It drags you down, floats your heart away. I know I'm a little bit funny, and I guess I'm in love with you, honey.
you've never heard this 80s album before. Now let's talk about my second favorite vocalist of all time, behind Elvis Presley. I'm talking about Tim Finn. Now, Tim started his career. He was one of the co-founders of Split Enz, and just the most amazing vocalist. If you've heard Split Enz, you've heard sort of their transition from this prog influence, very sophisticated pop, into new wave pop. But after the album Time and Tide, and that was their best-selling album to date, they took a little break, and Tim Finn recorded his album Escapade. He took these songs that didn't fit within the Split Enz format because these songs were kind of straightforward. They weren't quirky. They were just beautiful pop songs. He had a few hits in Australia. The album didn't do that well here in the US, but it still sold some. I believe it also sold in Canada, where Split Enz has a fan base there as well. I really love this album. So let's give a listen to Tim Finn and the album Escapade from 1983.
There's a fraction too much friction. There's a fraction too much friction, yeah. Men and women need each other, should be like sister and brother. There's a fraction too much friction, yeah. Staring at the embers of my memory, staring at the embers. They're all that's left of me, don't know where I'm going. There's no way of knowing. Staring at the embers, staring at the embers of my memory, trying to remember. And she was calling me back to these, leading me on to these, calling me back to these. Her voice was magical. You promised everything to me. Yeah, I wanna have you for my own. But we just have to wait and
I bet you've never heard this 80s album before. Now let's stay in 1983, and I want to talk to you about a band called The Mood. This was a synth pop new romantic trio from the UK, and they were signed to like RCA or BMG, and they started releasing singles. And each single was like, wow, the A-sides, the B-sides, they're fantastic. I think they may have gotten up to 4 or 5 singles, but each and every one of them was like, oh, I can't wait till an album comes out. Well, since they didn't have an album ready, what they did in America is they released an EP, and they took sort of the choice songs from the singles. And that EP was called Passion in Dark Rooms and was released here in the US in 1983. It was really wonderful, and I was really anticipating the release of an album. But I think they released one more single after this EP, and then they disappeared. Now, this EP has never been released on CD, but all the tracks have. There was a Cherry Red singles collection that came out with all the 7 inches, 12 inches, remixes, all that fun stuff. And then the band themselves put out a singles collection, and that was released either last year or the year before. I'm going to put a link in the description box so you can order that. And they just announced a new CD coming out that features all the 12-inch mixes. And there might even be something unreleased on there, but you can get all that information from the link in the description box. But right now, let's take a listen to The Mood, Passion in Dark Rooms from 1983.
You should be standing next to me. You should be standing next to me. You should be standing next to me. Passion in dark room. Passion in dark room.
bet you've never heard this 80s album before. The final title on this episode is Juluka, Stand Your Ground. Juluka was a South African band. It was fronted by Johnny Clegg and his partner Sifo, but I can't pronounce Sifo's last names. This was the follow-up album in America to the Scatterlings album. Now, Scatterlings was a big record. I think this was out even before Paul Simon did all his South African music, but it was a critically successful album. It was fantastic. And in South Africa, they put out an album called Work for All. And that did not come out here. What they did is they took off a few songs, I believe. Then they added a few songs that were more pop-oriented. And then they created the album Stand Your Ground. It's a really wonderful album that mixes pop and world music and South African rhythms. It's sung in both English and their native language. Of course, this was Juluka's final U.S. album, I believe. And then Johnny Clegg eventually went off and formed a band called Savuka and then went solo. And unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago. But I don't want to be a buzzkill, so I'm going to play tracks from Juluka, Stand Your Ground, released in 1984.
Bye bye December, African rain. The long gone summer has passed and I hear the owls calling my name. The firelight just danced its last across your face, my friend. And though I love you, I somehow I'm sitting on the top of Kilimanjaro. I can see you tomorrow. I'm sitting on the top of Kilimanjaro. I cast away all my sorrow. Follow me up. I'm sitting on the top of Kilimanjaro. Sfunum sevens. Work for all. We need to work to be seen. Sfunum sevens. There's a jobless army in the streets. Sfunum sevens. In a wage of hidden war. See Sfunum sevens. There's a jobless army at my door. Sfunum sevens. Manala komana, aukio lolo manana silaba, show me freedom. Manala komana, aukio lolo manana silaba, show me freedom. Manala komana, aukio lolo manana silaba, show me freedom. Manala komana, aukio lolo manana silaba.
Well, that's it for this episode. I bet you've never heard these 80s albums before. I hope this entices you to check out some of this great music. Pull it off your shelf if you already own it, or go online, or go out and find it in the wild. There's so much great music to be had out there. I'm just showing you the tip of the iceberg. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. And as I said at the beginning, remember to like, comment, share, subscribe. Ring that bell for future notifications. And until the next time, remember me. I'm Schnee, the CD Junkie.